The story begins when Padre Pio noticed something troubling during his decades of hearing confessions. He sat in the same small wooden confessional for over 50 years in San Giovanni Rotondo. Thousands of souls came to him seeking forgiveness and spiritual guidance throughout those years. They confessed sins of anger and lust and greed and dishonesty and countless other failings. They poured out their hearts about betrayals and cruelties in moments of weakness and shame. Yet Padre Pio began to notice a pattern that disturbed him deeply over time. There was one sin that almost nobody ever confessed to him despite its presence everywhere. This sin was so common that nearly everyone suffered from it in some form or another. Yet it was so hidden that most people did not even recognize it as a sin at all. They would confess everything else, but this one thing remained unspoken in the darkness of their hearts. Padre Pio understood that this unconfessed sin was causing tremendous damage to countless souls silently. It was blocking their spiritual progress and preventing them from finding true peace within themselves. It was poisoning their relationships and distorting their view of God and others around them. Yet they never brought it to confession because they did not see it for what it truly was. Padre Pio eventually spoke about this hidden sin to his spiritual director and close confidants who recorded it. He said the sin that people never confess is the sin of pride disguised as other things. Not the obvious pride that everyone recognizes and occasionally acknowledges in themselves honestly, but the subtle pride that hides beneath the surface of almost every other sin and failing we have. This pride wears many masks and speaks with many voices that deceive us about its presence. It convinces us that we are humble while we are actually consumed with self-importance secretly. Padre Pio explained that this hidden pride was the root of nearly all spiritual problems he encountered. It was the reason prayers went unanswered and confessions felt empty and peace remained elusive always. It was the barrier between the soul and God that most people never even knew existed there. They would confess the fruits of pride without ever naming the root that produced them continuously. They would confess anger without seeing that wounded pride caused them to react with such fury. They would confess jealousy without recognizing that pride made them resent the success of others. They would confess dishonesty without understanding that pride made them fear appearing weak or wrong. Padre Pio said this hidden pride took many forms that fooled even sincere and devout people. One form was the pride of self-sufficiency that refused to depend on God or others for anything. This pride said, I can handle everything myself and I do not need help from anyone at all. It disguised itself as strength and independence, but it was actually a rejection of grace and love. People with this pride would confess other sins but never mention their refusal to ask for help. They did not see this refusal as pride because the world celebrated self-reliance as a virtue. But Padre Pio knew that this self-sufficiency was a wall against God who wanted to help them. It blocked the flow of grace that could only come to those who acknowledged their need honestly. Another form was the pride of comparison that constantly measured the self against others around them. This pride was always asking, am I better than them or worse than them in various ways? It could not simply exist without ranking and judging and competing with everyone else constantly. Even spiritual life became a competition to be more holy than the person in the next pew. People with this pride would confess many things but never their obsession with how they measured up. They did not recognize that this comparison was pride because it sometimes made them feel bad about themselves. When they felt inferior, they thought they were experiencing humility, but it was actually wounded pride. True humility does not compare at all because it is not concerned with ranking or measurement. It simply rests in the love of God without needing to know where it stands relative to others. Another form was the pride of victimhood that clung to past wounds as a source of identity. This pride said, I have been wronged and everyone must acknowledge my suffering and make it right. It used past hurts as a shield against responsibility and a weapon against those who caused them. People with this pride would confess many things but never their attachment to being a victim. They did not see this as pride because they genuinely had been hurt by others in the past. But Padre Pio understood that refusing to release victimhood was a subtle form of self-exaltation. It placed the self at the center of a narrative where everyone else was an offender or a rescuer. It demanded that the world revolve around their wounds and cater to their special status as sufferer. True healing required releasing this victim identity and no longer defining oneself by past hurts received. Another form was the pride of false humility that performed modesty while secretly craving recognition for it. This pride would deflect compliments while hoping for more and feeling injured if they stopped coming. It would serve others while keeping careful track of how much it sacrificed and who noticed. It would speak self-deprecating words while inwardly believing itself superior to those who were more openly proud. People with this pride would confess many things but never their disguised self-obsession lurking beneath. They did not recognize this as pride because it looked exactly like humility on the outside surface. Padre Pio said this was perhaps the most dangerous form because it inoculated people against seeing their own pride. They believed they were humble because they performed all the external actions of humble people consistently. But inside they were filled with the same self-focus that drove the obviously proud people around them. Padre Pio explained that true humility was not thinking less of yourself but thinking of yourself less. It was not performing modesty but genuinely forgetting to be concerned with how you appear to others. It was freedom from the constant self-monitoring that asked, how am I doing and how do I look? The truly humble person was so focused on God and others that they forgot to evaluate themselves. This forgetfulness was the mark of genuine humility that pride could never successfully imitate for long. Padre Pio said another form of hidden pride was the refusal to accept correction from others. This pride would become defensive and angry when anyone pointed out a flaw or mistake made. It would find reasons why the criticism was wrong or unfair or motivated by the critic's own issues. It would agree outwardly while inwardly rejecting everything said and resenting the one who said it. People with this pride would confess anger but never the pride that made them unable to hear truth. They did not recognize this defensiveness as pride because they genuinely believed their self-defense was justified. Padre Pio taught that the humble person welcomed correction as a gift even when it was delivered poorly. They could sift the grain of truth from the chaff of unfair criticism without becoming defensive. They were more interested in growing than in being right or protecting their self-image from examination. Another form was the pride that could not admit being wrong or apologize sincerely to those harmed. This pride would make excuses and shift blame and minimize the damage done to avoid true repentance. It might say words of apology while making clear that others were also at fault for what happened. It could not simply say I was wrong and I am sorry without adding qualifications and context to soften things. People with this pride would confess sins in the abstract but rarely with genuine ownership and sorrow. They told God about what they did without truly taking responsibility for the harm caused to others. Padre Pio knew that this inability to fully own our wrongs was pride protecting the self-image. True repentance required letting the self-image shatter and standing exposed before God and others honestly. Another form was the pride that harbored secret contempt for others while appearing kind on the surface. This pride would smile at people while inwardly judging them as stupid or inferior or hopeless cases. It would help others while feeling superior to those who needed such help from someone like them. It would listen to others share their struggles while inwardly thinking I would never be so weak or foolish. People with this pride would confess unkind words or actions but never the contempt that lived in their hearts. They did not see this inner judgment as sin because it never made it into outward expression directly. But Padre Pio knew that God saw the heart and the contempt there was as real as any spoken word. This hidden contempt poisoned relationships even when it was never expressed because others sensed it somehow. Another form was the spiritual pride that looked down on those who were less devout or knowledgeable. This pride knew all the right theology and practiced all the right devotions with perfect consistency. It fasted and prayed and attended every service and knew the answers to every question about faith. But it used this spiritual accomplishment as another reason to feel superior to struggling sinners around them. People with this pride would confess minor spiritual failings but never their contempt for the less religious. They did not see this as pride because they were genuinely devoted and knowledgeable about their faith. But Padre Pio warned that this spiritual pride was the most dangerous of all forms of pride possible. It used the things of God as fuel for self-exaltation rather than pathways to genuine humility. The Pharisees of the Gospel were the prime example of this pride that Jesus condemned so strongly. They did everything right externally but their hearts were full of pride and judgment toward others. Padre Pio taught that the remedy for hidden pride was painful but simple in its basic approach. It required asking God to show us our pride in all its disguised and hidden forms within us. This was a dangerous prayer because God would answer it in ways that humiliated and exposed us. He would allow situations that revealed our pride to ourselves and sometimes to others watching. He would strip away our self-deceptions until we stood naked before the truth of our own hearts. This exposure was painful, but it was the only path to freedom from the prison of pride within. Padre Pio also taught that regular examination of conscience helped uncover hidden pride over time. We needed to look beneath our surface sins to find the pride that often motivated them secretly. When we confessed anger, we should ask what pride was wounded to cause such a reaction in us. When we confess jealousy, we should ask what pride made us resent the blessings of others so much. When we confess dishonesty, we should ask what pride we were protecting by refusing to tell truth. This deeper examination transformed confession from a list of behaviors into a genuine encounter with our hearts. Padre Pio encouraged people to confess their pride directly even when they could not see it clearly yet. He suggested saying, "I confess my pride in all its forms, known and unknown to me, honestly." This opened the door for God to begin revealing and healing what we could not yet see ourselves. It acknowledged that pride was certainly present even when we could not point to specific examples yet. It created humility by admitting that we were not even fully aware of our own spiritual condition truly. Padre Pio spent his life helping people see what they had hidden even from themselves inside. He knew that the unconfessed sin of pride was blocking more souls than any other single obstacle. He urged everyone to stop confessing only the symptoms and start addressing the disease beneath them. Only when pride was named and confessed could the soul begin to find genuine freedom and peace. This teaching remains as relevant today as it was during his lifetime of hearing confessions in that small booth. Modern people are perhaps even more blind to their pride because the culture celebrates self-importance constantly. We are encouraged to promote ourselves and build our personal brands and demand recognition from everyone. We are taught that self-esteem is the highest good and anything that threatens it must be resisted strongly. In this environment, the hidden pride that Padre Pio identified has only grown stronger and more disguised. His invitation to examine ourselves and confess our pride remains the path to freedom and peace today.